Hello, citizens of the internet. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome guys, gals, geeks, gamers, gays, galvatrons, galvantulas, and most of all, Gary. You're always welcome here, Gary. It has been over a year since I've made anything, and let me tell you, that year has been a lot of things, mostly hard and sad. Anyway, the Enneagram. This is a video essay about the Enneagram. I don't know if you've seen Local Scriptman's videos on the subject, if you've got a Types videos on the subject, you absolutely should. They are brilliant, you know? But for those who need some catching up before I explain my absolute wacko theory about how it works, that is maybe gonna blow your mind. The Enneagram is fundamentally a method of categorization that is split into 9 numeric types. The numbers associated with each type don't matter, they're symbolic. The point is, it makes them easier to categorize and talk about, and these are common fixations people have, right? They are common patterns of coping that people use to avoid doing emotional work, right? Been in therapy a while, dog. I reckon. I actually do have a wide-brimmed hat, but I'm too lazy to. It is a theory that fundamentally the personhood that you are wanting to achieve, the holistic personhood, is stifled by the ways in which you cope that are unhealthy, right? And which one of these methods you cope with is ultimately dependent on your personal traumas and what you have interpreted from them, right? So, like, I'm not a 7, but a 7 would choose to fundamentally not confront their fear and therefore just, avoid it, like, as long as they can with escapism or drugs or whatever else. This theory is going to require some basic knowledge, right? Go watch the type videos of Local Scriptman if you want to know each individual type and what I'm talking about. I'm mostly going to be talking about 1, 2, and 5 for the purposes of this example, but I would like you to watch the entire thing, because I think if you're interested in writing even a little bit, it's going to change the way you think about your characters. So go do that. Come back later. Alright, so you're back, and I trust you've seen the entire thing. So I won't explain any of the individual types because that was your homework. So the Enneagram has a sub-theory within the larger umbrella theory of Enneagram discourse called tri-type, And tri-type is kind of the concept that you are f***ed up in more than one way. Specifically, you're f***ed up in the way that you try to gain emotional validation. You're f***ed up in the way that you try to understand the world, and you're f***ed up in the way that you try to mitigate or avoid the things you're afraid of, right? Yes, this does mean that every human being feels fear. Sorry, Stoics. No amount of Play-Doh is going to make you not afraid of a snake. It's a snake. It's going to poison your ass. So, tri-type theory, for the purposes of this, it's solid. I like it. This is not meant to replace tri-type theory. This is meant to build upon it, right? And I just want to preface this by saying, do not take what I am about to say at face value whatsoever. What I'm about to say, there's a chance it's something, but there's also a chance it's really dumb. I'm not an academic researcher. I'm just a person on the internet, no smarter than you. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in your brain. I don't know what it's like to be smarter than me, because I'm not. My point being, you should, if this theory sounds interesting at all to you, then you should absolutely do your own research. You should do your own academic findings. You should expand upon it or revise it to fit your specific needs, right? Because I don't want it to be a thing where you just parrot this video like the bludgeoning Bible to beat Enneagram discourse havers with. That's not what I want, ever. This theory is less of a sound academically researched thing, and more a 7th grade book report that's about to blow your mind, because in this metaphor you're also a 7th grader. Yes, I stole that from David Achu, and if you are mad at me, David, yeah, that's fair. Sorry, it was a good metaphor. I couldn't think of a better one. Here is my fundamental theory, right? Usually the Enneagram types in this example, in your tri-type, are split into the heart, head, and gut center, right? And the heart, head, and gut center are fundamentally indicative of what you do to gain self-esteem, what you do to rationalize fear or to avoid it or whatever, and what you do around making sense of the world, right? Here is my theory that is maybe a little bit out there. If it's stupid, please tell me. I don't want to repeat this to, like, people that, if it's really that dumb. But it's food for thought, I guess, regardless. So, here's my theory, right? Any of the 9 Enneagram types can manifest as a heart, gut, or head type. Now, I've been thinking about this theory for a while, right? I've been thinking about it because I feel like the heart, head, and gut center is onto something, but the way I've always seen it described is the idea that, you know, some characters are interpretable through this lens, and I think that's absolutely true, but I felt like there was something missing. Like as an example, right, of a character that I would say this theory would benefit in the analysis of. Let's take Sheriff McManshape from Wally's Wonder Boner, or whatever the one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. It's really good, go see it. It's the only good Five Nights at Freddy's movie there is. In this movie, right, spoilers for the movie, by the way, obviously, in this movie, there are killer animatronics that are basically possessed by the ghosts of a satanic cult who did pedophilia, and I just realized how demonetizable that entire sentence was. So in the movie, there are these killer animatronics that have been ensnaring this town for decades, right? And the sheriff character is the character who basically bargains with them to make it so that they leave the town alone, and in return, the town will feed them outsiders. And I thought about that, and I thought to myself, not only is that kind of a fawn response, which is not something I see discussed a lot in Enneagram spaces, even though I feel like it's kind of a way of avoiding fear, but broadly, I feel like the fawn response is kind of characteristic of a fear type 2. Right? Because think about it. He's confronted with something objectively scary, and his response is to friend it. Literally bargain with the darkness. And that characteristic need to, like, compartmentalize yourself in favor of another person, that's very type 2 coded, right? Some might argue that this is just a type 7 response of avoiding the thing that's scary instead of confronting it. But I would say, wouldn't it be kind of interesting to explore this concept of fawning through the lens of a type 2? Because I feel like this opens the door for a lot more possibilities in terms of interpreting characters. Another character that I feel like might fit this description of an unorthodox head, heart, or gut type is from JoJo's Poco Loco Bizzoco, Guido Mista from Part 5. By the way, side note, you should watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Don't start with Part 1. I have seen so many people try to get into JoJo, start with Part 1 and bounce off, and I have had a much higher success rate with Part 4 and 5, and I'm sorry, guys. That's science. If you're mad at, like, empirical data that I have from my own anecdotal experience, then you know what? You can die mad about it. I'm skipping parts, and I don't feel bad. Anyway, Part 5, which is Season 4 on Netflix, in case you're curious, there's this character, Guido Mista, right, who is not only, like, afraid of things, I would argue personally that his fear type is a 1, right? And how this manifests is really interesting because it manifests as a superstition, right? You know how 1s are like obsessed with rules and order and the concept of stability through these rules and order, applying their anger to like enforce them. Basically, Mista has this superstition that the number 4 is gonna kill him, which in his own personal experience is, I guess, not entirely unsubstantiated, but it's hard to see it as more than a coincidence that he's like weirdly irrationally afraid of. He expresses that fear as anger, right? And like anger about when people don't specifically avoid encountering the number 4, right? And when people like violate his own personal rule set for avoiding that fear, right? Which is very type 1 coded. But I don't think the type 1 complex necessarily has to manifest as superstitions if it's a fear type. It could manifest as a set of survival skills that are maybe a bit outdated. It could manifest as someone trying to use their morals and righteous character to keep them alive, right? There are a lot of ways to interpret this prompt. It's open-ended, you know? But to focus on the examples that I'm trying to give to substantiate this idea that maybe the head, heart, and gut center can align with any given Enneagram type is Arlong, right? Let's take Arlong from One Penis. Arlong is a fish man, and I think people who try to tri-type him would generally agree that like 4 and 1 fall somewhere in his tri-type, right? What I would personally argue is that 4 is not his heart type, but his gut type. And that 1 is not his head type, but his heart type. And here's why. Like, Arlong definitely is, in some respects, a 4, right? He believes that the world is rigidly hierarchical and inherently meaningless and cruel, and he will try anything to climb to the top of this hierarchy because he sees the hierarchy as just the natural order of things. You know, it's the whole complex of the only way to win in this world is to be a top dog, so I'm gonna do that. However, I don't think that this is in relation to his identity or his self-esteem. I think it's more in relation to his understanding of the world, because we never have a moment where this nihilism is confronted by giving him self-esteem, right? We never have a moment where he has to question his identity through his understanding that, you know, the world is cruel or whatever. And we never have a moment where he loses self-esteem and becomes cold and nihilistic, right? It seems like this whole lack of belief, lack of morality, this whole lack of soul and heart that he chooses to impose on himself is just kind of his understanding of the world and how he interprets the events in his life. And isn't that just a head type? No, head type is fear. Isn't that just a gut type, you know? But I would argue his heart type is a 1, right? Because when it comes to his identity, when it comes to what he gains personal satisfaction and validation from that allows him to distract himself from the shame of what he's done, it always comes back to the moral righteousness, right? The superiority, the need to believe that his order is fundamentally above that of the humans. It's always about revenge, about showing them what it's like. And that is more so related to who he fundamentally is and who he conceives himself as, right? He doesn't have, like, self-esteem issues surrounding his own, like, he doesn't have self-esteem issues surrounding his own, like, interpretation of the world as meaningless, but he does have them around the idea that he is morally righteous. And you see this because every time he has an opportunity to take the actual moral high ground, he doesn't, right? He does self-serving shit, and continues to do self-serving shit, presumably because he can morally justify it as for the greater good, right? And that, to me, kind of sounds like a heart type. It sounds like he's gaining this sense of satisfaction from it almost, this sense of easing the void. But then, as another example, right? Some characters could get emotional validation from different things that we don't typically think of as heart types, right? Think of Jimmy Neutron. Like, he doesn't just avoid what he's afraid of through being intelligent, right? He doesn't have some big existential fear. He has an ego. He has an ego around being smart, around not just being smart, but being smarter than everyone else in the room, knowing the best, knowing the most, and all of the best Jimmy Neutron episodes, he gets humbled because he has no common sense, you know? And fundamentally, Jimmy Neutron as a show could be argued to be about this Type 5 heart center, this boy genius who is a genius but is also a boy, and has to come to terms with the fact that he can't just use his genius to bypass maturity and to validate his own sense of superiority. So that is all kind of the theorizing about it, right? How do you practically apply this? If you would like to, you know, I'm not going to force you to. I'm not your mom. So, when it comes to the practical application of this specific branch of Enneagram theory that I just invented by being weird, I think the best thing you could do with it is really just think, what does this character do? Does this character have a complex around fear, understanding, or like self-concept, and really exploring what they do to avoid doing the emotional work of those things, right? For a 2 fear type, this could look like a fawn response. For a 1 head type, for a 1 fear type, it could look like superstitions or specific sets of rigid instructions, the need to adhere, you know. But for an 8 fear type, it could be like that they choose to be alone and solitary and isolate themselves because they're afraid of, like, you know, genuine intimacy, or they're afraid of, like, rejection, or they're afraid of something social that requires other people, right? That could be a type 8 fear complex. I don't know. Go crazy with it. What I'd really like to do with this video is not to, like, get a message out there or anything that I think I'm right or whatever. I don't. I think that this theory as it stands is fundamentally incomplete without further iteration. However, I do think that maybe there's something there, right? And I think it would be interesting if we could kind of explore that territory together. And I think it would be fun to see what other people come up with in response to this. What I'm hoping, really, is that this sparks a discussion about what head, heart, and gut types really mean, you know? And how they can be applied, and how our understanding of them can change, you know? And this theory is maybe a little wacko, maybe a little crackpot, but I'm glad I got to say it, and I'm glad I got it off my chest. Now, call to action, go think about it more yourself. Peace.
For 72 hours, goddamn, I feel amazing. Damn, I'm in the matrix, my mind is living on cloud 9, and this 9 is never on vacation. Start up that Maserati and vroom, vroom, I'm racing. Popping pills in the lobby, and I pray they don't find her naked. And I pray you niggas is agent. Shooters go after Judas. Jesus Christ, if I live life on my knees, ain't no need to do this. Park it in front of looters, next to the church is chicken. All you pussies is losers, all my niggas is clean and screaming all my life.